Hello there, internets. Good to see you again. How are you all doing? Here, it's wonderful, weather-wise. Gray, bit of moisture falling from the air. Just some drops here and there after some relatively heavy rains past couple of days. Why is that interesting at all? It's not really. I just figured I'd mention it because why not? Has it been raining here a couple days? No, it appears to have been. The ground sure looks wet. The trees sure seem to be wet. You can tell a lot about the future of the weather with meteorology and forecasting. It lets you predict certain things pretty accurately. Guess what else lets you predict things pretty accurately? Understanding of history and current events. As I've been saying for more than the past 100 days or so, since October 7th, and as I wrote in the very beginning of this situation in Israel and Gaza, that this war would not end the way that either party claimed that it will. And we're seeing that so far. It's already changed its goals on both sides multiple times. And unfortunately, we still have a situation where there are well over 100 hostages, mostly presumed alive, but we can't know for sure, being held in Gaza by Hamas and being sought by the IDF. The problem is that after 100 days or so, the Israeli public, has been demanding more and more that these hostages be released, which they should immediately be released. But the problem is that the government has to consider many factors, one of which is U.S. pressure, political pressure. And even though it doesn't matter what the world says, it matters what Israel does. And that's true for any country, by the way. It's just an expression said in Israel. Because very commonly, the world is against whatever Israel is doing because the world hates the fact that there is a state of the Jews, by the Jews, for the Jews, right? They hate that. Oh, this puddle looks like a duck. Some kind of bird. Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Very duck-like, almost cartoonishly. Well, anyway. So, given that there is that situation, and the U.S. is trying to pressure Israel to cut back on the amount of wrecking ball that drives through Gaza as it looks for these hostages, while the Hamas keeps them instead of just returning them and surrendering, and then the war would end. You still have more and more people in the peanut gallery saying, no, Hamas won't surrender. Why would they surrender? Because that's what people do when they lose wars. But Hamas is not a traditional fighting force. They do not respect international laws, although they want them applied to Israel for some weird reason. And you have countries like South Africa actually trying to make legal cases arguing that Israel is violating whatever laws, even though the Hamas is literally a war crime. Yeah, the entire organization is a war crime. They are a terrorist organization, and the way that they operate is through war crimes. They use human shields. That's a war crime. They attack civilians. That's a war crime. They intentionally attack civilians, right? That's a war crime, right? Everything they're doing, they keep hostages. That's a war crime. They don't let their hostages have visits from the Red Cross. That's a war crime. And when you say that, well, they're keeping soldiers, yeah, soldiers have rights too under Geneva Conventions, and they're keeping the soldiers hostages. They're not keeping them as prisoners of war, right? So those are war crimes too, each and every one of those. They're not getting visits from the Red Cross. Those are war crimes. And every day that passes is another one of these war crimes for all of these things. Well, Israel is bombing Gaza and killing tens of thousands of people. No. Israel is bombing Gaza, and tens of thousands of people have died as a result of not getting out of the way when Israel told them repeatedly for hours on end, get out of the way, we are dropping a bomb on such and so building. No, we're not getting out of the way. If you stay there, you're going to die. Then we'll die. Well, okay, then they die. Right? And we tell them that. Israel tells them that. The army tells them that because we want to minimize the casualty rate. If that were not the case, then why would they be calling all these people and telling them to get out of harm's way? It's a very simple equation. Right? There is really no reason for these people to be dying in such great numbers, except for the fact that Hamas does not want them to live. Because it's far better for Hamas that more Palestinians die. Right? They've never wanted their people to be free. If they wanted their people to live a good life, they would have given them a good life. Right? More than a decade ago. 18 years ago or so, when they took over control in 2006 or so. Right? When Hamas took over control of Gaza from the Fatah, they had every opportunity since then to build a wonderful place. But how can they do that if Israel controls it? Well, they wouldn't have to be controlled at their borders by Egypt as well as by Israel if they weren't in fact trying to smuggle in illegal weapons all the time and trying to build terror tunnels constantly. And we see the result of them having done that now for so long. Hundreds and hundreds of miles of terror tunnels have already been dug up underneath the streets. For what purpose? For the purpose of attacking Israel. Not for the purpose of protecting the civilians from bombing. Right? Just for the purpose of protecting their soldiers and hiding hostages and attempting to murder more Israelis. And that's why this war, as I said from the very beginning, is unlikely to end the way that the Prime Minister of Israel said it would end. And it's unlikely to end the way that the Hamas thinks it's going to end, or said that they want it to end. And unfortunately, it means this conflict will simply last longer. Once again, because of politics and a bunch of people who are allied with the wrong side, putting pressure on the wrong side. You know, not every underdog is a good guy. And in this particular conflict, the underdog is the Hamas, and the underdog is not the good guy. And you can say, well, they're not really the underdog if they have Iran backing them. Yeah, that's kind of true. But just because there are more people in Iran doesn't make Iran top dog. Yeah, they might have some nuclear weapons or whatever, or things close to it. And they might have a lot more people, right, than Israel, that's for sure. But there's also a few thousand miles of distance between Israel and Iran, and there are some countries in the way, if you haven't noticed, like Iraq and Jordan. And sure, in theory, they outnumber Israel vastly, but in reality, Iran is a paper tiger, and everybody knows it. And the way they hold on to power is by internal oppression of their people. And that's not good for the Iranian people. And that's not good for their proxies. Because their proxies, who do their dirty work for them, ultimately pay a price. Whether it's the Hezbollah in Lebanon, or the Hamas in Gaza, or the West Bank, right, which is Judea and Samaria, for those of you who don't know your history of the Middle East. Those are the names of that land, and they have been those names for thousands of years. And the only reason people refer to them as the West Bank is just to insult the Jews. Just like the very word Palestine was an invention by the Romans, borrowing the word Philistina from the Philistines, who had been dead already for quite a long time before the Romans gave that name to the land that is Israel, in an effort to rub it into Israel that Israel no longer existed as a nation, and that most of the people were exiled, sent off into slavery, etc. Yet some Jews remained on the land and always did. And that is why there is absolutely no historical disconnection from the land to the people throughout the thousands of years that they were living in exile. And that the Jewish people were always hoping and dreaming to return to Israel and to Jerusalem. And that is why Jews have always said the prayers and other things that they say every year and very often during prayers. That their dream is to return to Israel. Their dream is to return to Jerusalem. Right? And when it happened, then all of that took on a very new meaning as the dream became actualized. And while not every Jew lives in Israel, a large chunk of Jews live in Israel. A significant portion of the Jews lives in Israel. After having spent the last almost century and a half, about 140 years now, repopulating different parts of the country, rebuilding and building new settlements, towns, cities, whatever you want to call them, throughout the land. And again, that is why this war that Israel is currently engaged with Hamas in is unlikely to end the way that anybody thinks. There is simply too much history on this land of Israel for it to simply end the way that people might think. Because of political pressures, historical significance, other influences in the field, on the ground. It is a simple fact that what is happening is a result really of thousands of years, culminating at this point. And you can say, well, this war isn't about thousands of years. Yes, it is. It really is. It's about the fact that Jews have a connection here since thousands of years, and no other people alive today, right? There are no Canaanites anymore. There are no other people who might have been here at one point or the other before the Jews. There are simply no other people who are connected to this land more than the Jewish people in terms of time. And that really annoys people who happen to hate the Jews, usually because they're ignorant and just hateful people in their culture. Because why would you hate people who've contributed so much to the world, other than jealousy and hatred? when it's in your culture to teach that death is a glorious thing and killing is a glorious thing, as the extremist jihadis do. It's kind of no surprise that they're doing what they're doing. And they've been training their children to do this for many decades already. So you do have generations of people who have hate in their heart. And it is unfortunate and sad. And the great hope is that one day they will stop having hate in their heart. And they will realize that loving their fellow mankind is a better value and is a better way to live, is a better way to be. Right? But their ideology preaches death and destruction. So what do you do when an ideology preaches death and destruction? Like, they seek death. Well, what do? Obviously, you have to defend yourself against it and do whatever you can to stop it. Anyway, yeah, there's that. Those are some things that can be predicted that I have predicted. And are once again coming true to pass. Just like I said that I predicted that the government and the Prime Minister knew about this attack before it happened and let it happen for political purposes, most probably. And there is evidence of that has been mounting since the beginning of this war. And it's been demonstrable evidence and non-arguable evidence. And just as I told you that the price of Bitcoin would most likely revert to the RMLR before it hit that third standard deviation band down again over the past 2 days on the 4-hour time frame. And so it did. Are you shocked that my predictions are correct? You shouldn't be. You should just learn how to read the information correctly, and then you would see it too. It's not that hard. Jump into the Alpha Trading Discord. You might learn something. All right, that's it. Happy trading. Bye.